Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 7:36 a.m. East Coast time, Monday, July 22nd. Hope you all had a great weekend. It is now the best day of the week, Monday. Start your weeks off right. I'm excited whether you're driving to work, whether you're doing whatever you're doing for your own business, whether you're just chilling and you're off today. Hopefully you're having a good start to your morning. We've got a 10 or 11 game, I don't even know right now. I think it's 11 game, 11 game MLB slate today. No WNBA, so we're just focusing on MLB today. Excited to do that. I have right now in here 6 pitchers that I have interest in early on. Now, potentially 7. I guess we can talk about it. We'll talk about that 7th right away. But it's a weird slate. There's a lot of expensive pitchers, guys that you wouldn't expect to be as priced up as they are, maybe in the 10, 11, 12K range even. Then you have a lot of guys below $5,000. There's no $5,000 range here today, but you got, 6 players below $5,000 in the 4K range. Usually we're lucky if we see one of those, and I say lucky very loosely. But yeah, there's a lot to break down. I'll get into it later on today. I do have my article, so if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Sal Vetri. I cover daily fantasy sports in the NFL, NBA, MLB like you're seeing, WNBA, which they are off tonight, 3-game slate though tomorrow if you want to check that out. I've got videos from past days and you can see kind of what my tendencies are there. And before we get started, if you could hit the like button, that helps me. If you could hit the red subscribe button, if you're new here, don't hit it yet. See if you get any value from this video, maybe midway through. And at the end, I'll just try and remember everybody if you could hit that button if you got value. And if this is your umpteenth time seeing my content, if you could hit that button, helps me out. So I do have a video, or not a video, I have a video right now, yeah. I have an article that comes out later in the day on Patreon, ranks all my stacks. It's usually about 1,000 to 1,500 words, ranks my stacks in terms of hitting, one-off players that I'm very interested in favorable spots, and then my pitchers that I'm interested ranked with analysis. So hopefully that helps. It's more of an in-depth, deeper dive breakdown into what I'm doing right here in a video, and that's for patrons, people who want exclusive content, all linked down below. But for right now, let's get into this video. So yeah, we got 22 pitchers on the slate, and we got a lot of expensive ones. 4 guys at least over 10,000, 2 in the 12K range, 1 in the 11K range, and then Eduardo Rodriguez is almost touching 11K. So Garrett Cole and Mike Clevinger. Look, out of these 2 pitchers early on, at least right now at 7 in the morning, 12 hours before lock, I have more interest in Clevinger. They pretty much grade out as like the same play for me, except a couple of places, and Clevinger is more dominant in each of those places, or at least is more favorable. So they're both priced very similarly. Clevinger's cheaper, so advantage him. Clevinger gives up less power overall by a lot. I mean, it's a smaller sample, but 0.76 home runs per 9 compared to Cole's 1.46 home runs per 9. And then when you want to look at their matchup, I added some more columns and some more data to this data sheet. So if you are a patron, you get it in a downloadable version. You can get that down below. If you can't see it and you say, Sal, blow it up, you can get it, link down below. So the matchups today, both of their opponents strike out the exact same amount of the time against right-handed pitching, 22.5% since June 1st. I'm using June 1st data. It's about 50 games or so now. I think it's fresher data with just the more realistic lineups that are going to be out there, the more structured lineups since the first month of the year. You're trying to wait out some players. Some guys get DFA'd. So they both strike out 22.5%, which is about below average. So not great strikeout matchups overall. And then when you take into account the team's ISOs that they're facing, Oakland's number 5 against righties since June 1st, and then Toronto's number 7. Yes, this Toronto team is very good against right-handed pitching. Not so much against lefties, but since June 1st, very good against righties. So it's both a top 10 matchup in terms of the team is very good at hitting for power, doubles, triples, and home runs, and they're bottom half of the league in terms of striking out. So I give that favor spot there. I mean, in terms of the matchup, it's a more favorable matchup for Clevinger, but just barely. People might think that it's a lot, but just barely. He's cheaper, and he doesn't give up more power in general. When you factor in the ballparks, you're going to see that today is going to be a little bit probably more disadvantage or not as advantageous for Clevinger, but that's really the only downside for him outside of he walks like 2 or 3% more batters, which really isn't any sort of concern to me. So I choose Clevinger, but realistically, I do have interest in both of those players. It's just that if I had to pick one of them, it would be Clevinger today. They're both really expensive, so there's a chance I don't get to either of them because I think there are other guys who are cheaper and a decent amount cheaper that have the same upside. Robbie Ray would be the second guy I have interest in today at $11,400, going up against Baltimore. Look, Baltimore is one of the worst teams in the league against lefties. They strike out at a decent clip of 25.4%. Robbie Ray is a lefty that is a top 3 on the slate in terms of their strikeout rate, and they don't have much power against lefties. They're bottom 2 on this slate. The only team that is worse than them against lefties is the Miami Marlins, just to put that in some sort of perspective. Robbie Ray has a great strikeout rate, and when you have guys like Garrett Cole and Clevinger on the slate, it makes it hard to have the best strikeout rate on the slate, but he has 30.8% overall strikeout rate, strikes out guys from both sides of the plate. Like I said, the matchup today against Baltimore, they don't generate power since June 1st against lefties, and they strike out a ton against lefties, and he's going to be pitching in a very favorable ballpark, at least that is played favorable so far this year, and he's $700 cheaper than Clevinger. He's $1,100 cheaper than Cole. I like Robbie Ray today. He is priced up, like let's not get that twisted, but a lot of guys on the slate you're going to see are very expensive and priced up a little bit ridiculous in my opinion. It's tight pricing, so when you factor in that everybody's priced up today, yeah, Robbie Ray at 11.4, it's expensive, but but I do like it probably a little bit more than Garrett Cole, and right around the same as Clevenger. Third guy in my player pool is Sonny Gray. I was on him in this exact same matchup. He's almost $10,000, which is crazy, but I think the price point is fair. He's been incredible this year. 55.5% ground ball rate. So he's a ground ball pitcher, but this year he's picked up his strikeout stuff a ton since what we were used to seeing like 2-3 years ago when he was with Oakland. 31% against lefties, 26.7% against righties, 28.9% strikeout rate overall, and then you pair that with a 55.5% ground ball rate. So what is he doing? He's just getting ground balls and strikeouts, so that means he's limiting the damage, indicated by his .96 home runs per 9 and his 28.5% fly ball percentage. That's really good. Now we get to a Milwaukee team that strikes out not that much against lefties, 22.8% of the time, and they have a decent amount of power overall. But when you break it down into how much power they have against lefties, it's bottom half of the league by a wide margin. It's bottom third of the league. Sonny Gray had a lot of success in this matchup recently. He's a guy who strikes out lefties and gives up no power, a 111 ISO to lefties, and he's going to face at least 5. It's probably going to be exactly 5 lefties in this lineup today. We saw him have success last time out against Milwaukee a couple weeks ago. I like him a lot again today. Again, the price point is probably $700 more than I'm comfortable with, but I'm fine getting there. He's the third out of my 6 pitchers that I'm interested in. And then I kind of skipped the whole mid-range. I skipped the 9K. I skipped the couple players in the 8K range and the upper 7K range. Daniel Ponce de Leon, I do like his overall matchup today. He strikes out a lot of lefties, and his he gives up no power to lefties, and we know that Pittsburgh is a lot of lefties in the lineup, but they just don't strike out. They're a terrible opponent, and I'd rather not pay $9K for him. CC against Minnesota is just a no-go. He's priced up, and against a team that has so much power, and they hit lefties really hard. 233 ISO on the slate. It's the highest on the slate in terms of how much power they generate against left-handed pitching. CC is a lefty who has a flat fastball, which means home runs today. I like a Minnesota stack. Martin Perez against the Yankees. It's good that Perez limits damage at .71. But I'm not getting there. I'm not targeting him against the Yankees at 8,100. So these pitchers are guys I don't have interest in. Jalen Beeks is now going to be the probable instead of the probable long reliever today against the Red Sox. No, thank you. Ryan Buchesi, he's going to be starting for Toronto today. His first start off the injury list against Cleveland. No, thank you. Homer Bailey against Houston. No, thank you. I get to Chase Anderson at 7,200. If you watch my videos often, you know I love Chase Anderson. This guy works deep into the games. Now his innings pitched per start of 4.06 is going to be skewed by a couple of starts early in the year where he got like 2/3 of an inning. But recently, the past month or so of the season, he's been pitching really well. His strikeout rate is 23% from both sides of the plate, so he strikes out both sides of the plate. He got to match up against Cincinnati today. That against right-handed pitching, they're pretty much average on the year, but they strike out 24% of the time. That's pretty decent compared to a lot of the other spots on the slate. 7,200 is a little bit more expensive. I like Chase Anderson when he's in the 6K range more, but he's been one of the more consistent pitchers, and he's a 130 favorite today, so he's the fourth guy in my player pool. Trevor Richards right below him at $7,000 against the White Sox today. Richard works deep into the games, or at least deep for his price point, at 5.47 innings pitched per start. That's 5 1/3 to 5 2/3 innings. You factor in that he does limit home runs a decent amount. He gives up walks, which is worrisome, but he gets a Chicago team today that against right-handed pitching is the third worst on the slate, and it's barely. It's like the gap between third, second, and the worst on the slate is so close. And the other two guys, or the other two teams that are in that same exact position in terms of being really bad generating power since June 1st against righties, and it's on the sheet right now. I updated the sheet to have these stats, is the Cardinals, the watered-down Cardinals lineup, and that it's kind of to be expected when you have like 3 of your 5 best hitters out, and then also this Miami team, which is to be expected because they're just bad. But this team also strikes out against right-handed pitching 24.5% of the time, which is above average for this slate. So yeah, Trevor Williams, the fact that he goes deep into the games, the fact that he's playing a team that doesn't have a lot of power, and he really doesn't give up a lot of power, at least to the left-handed side of the plate, a little bit to righties. He has some interest to me, Trevor Richards that is. He's probably out of the 6 pitchers I'm going to name, or the 7 if you consider me having some interest in Garrett Cole, but not a lot. He's probably the one that I get to the least because I do prefer Chase Anderson for 7,200, and if I'm going to go lower, I'd rather go all the way down to $6,500 Trevor Williams today. Trevor Williams is a guy who works very deep into the games. I mean, 5.86 innings pitched per start. He's going into the 6th inning more so than not, especially in matchups that favor him, which you're going to get today. The St. Louis team since June 1st. Second worst in the team at generating power against right-handed pitching, second only to the Miami Marlins. When you break down into their strikeout rate against right-handed pitching, they're striking out 24.5% of the time. Again, above average on the slate. Now you're going to face a pitcher who doesn't have the greatest strikeout stuff, but he at least strikes out righties 20.7% of the time compared to everybody else down here. Everybody else is either below 20% or below 15%. It's really gross. It becomes really gross. There's going to be a lot of righties in this lineup. There'd be DeJong and Goldschmidt is pretty much where all the power comes from in this lineup, with Ozuna, with Carpenter out from the left-handed side with Yadier Molina out. So Trevor Williams, the fact that he goes deep into the games is going to give him a big bump, and the fact that he's facing a team that has been really struggling generating any sort of power is going to give him a big bump for me. And then obviously he's priced at $6,500. So those are 6 pitchers so far. Now we get to this price range where there's 6 guys below $5,000, and I don't have interest in any of them. Look, it's always sexy to try and get a guy against Miami, and now you have Ivan Nova, who's only $4,800. So you get a cheap pitcher who is very, very bad, but he's in a most favorable matchup that you get. So how much can he really hurt you? So this is really interesting to me. This is going to be a spot that I have to kind of break down into later in the day. Is Ivan Nova getting me 5 points today? Is that risky? Like, is that bad? Because he's only 4,800. Obviously, I wanted to get him more than that. But if he blows up and only gets me 5 points against Miami, because keep in mind, Ivan Nova is a righty, and this Miami team doesn't strike out too often. Over the last 50 games or so, though, if you break that into it against righties, they will strike out a little bit more. So it's a little bit more favorable, but you're getting a pitcher in Ivan Nova who strikes out 14.9% of batters. So it's not like he's going out there and lighting it up. And he only goes, on average, 5 1/3, 5 2/3 innings pitched per start, which is actually decent for the price point. But when you factor in that he's only giving up he's only getting 14% strikeout rate. He's giving up over 200 ISO to both sides of the plate, a 5.11 Sierra. I'd rather get to Miami bats here, and that's just being completely honest. Peter Lambert against Washington's a no. Eric Feed against Colorado. Colorado, this is a Colorado team outside of Coors Field that when they're facing right-handed pitching, they strike out a little bit higher than most teams in the league. Strike out some of the highest percentage in terms of guys, in terms of strikeout rate overall. Sorry, it's really hot down here. So that's where I'm at right now with the pitching. There's 6 of them: Clevenger, Robbie Ray, Sonny Gray, Chase Anderson, Trevor Richards, and Trevor Williams. 6. I'd probably put Trevor Richards last, but I do have an article later in the day. If you're interested in why I didn't say anything about stacks, it's because there's no lineups out. Half the Vegas lines aren't even out or solidified right now, so I really don't know what to exactly go with for stacks based on players' pricing. I have to know if they're batting 5th or 6th or if they're even in the lineup. So I'll be doing my article later today. It's linked down below. You can follow me on Twitter at SalVetcherDFS, and you can subscribe here if you got any value. My name's Sal. You already know that. Peace out, gang.